If you guys are into shooting the copper bullets, man, I got a great deal for you. We have partnered with Barnes Bullets. They are world famous, known for that VOR-TX rifle, the deadliest, most accurate hunting loads on the planet. I like this company, guys, because I have a personal connection to these guys. Down in central Utah, my dad's got this ranch, and on the way to the ranch, you drive past this Barnes Bullets factory, and it's a really cool building just kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So I know them well. These all-copper bullets provide destructive power, double diameter expansion, maximum weight retention, and devastating energy transfer, all with excellent accuracy. It's a great choice for Western big game hunters and shooters everywhere. So check them out at barnesbullets.com and let me know what you guys think. I appreciate it. You've heard my Silencer Central ads, I'm sure. And I don't know if you have reached out and contacted them yet. If you're interested in a silencer, though, man, this is the way to go. Silencer Central from the start to finish, because it's quite the process. If you've never gotten a suppressor for one of your rifles, you've got to go through and do the ATF paperwork and the background checks and all that kind of stuff. But the cool part is Silencer Central takes care of it all. It's a several-month process, and so what's cool about it is if you don't want to drop all that money right at the top end of this whole process, you just get a hold of them, and you can do like a payment plan while they're taking care of all the paperwork on the back end. I have the Banish 30, and this thing is awesome. I've never used one of these before, so I'm like learning as I go along. But what I was getting at is from start to finish, Silencer Central has been some of the most amazing people I've ever worked with through the process. They treated me like I was family, and I really appreciated it. You guys should check them out, and you can call them at 866-891-4494 or check it out at silencercentral.com. It will be worth your time, I promise. There exists a threat, from anti-hunting groups to politicians trying to give our land away, and we won't stand for it. Those vast western landscapes provide the space for our wildlife to thrive and a place for hunters and anglers to fuel the fire that sparks their soul. In this show, we share our love of hunting, fishing, and conservation. Here, we provide the foundation to meet these threats through passion and the grit of the American outdoorsman. Welcome to the Western Huntsman Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Western Huntsman Podcast. This is Jim Huntsman, your host, coming at you from the Broken Tine Studio and brought to you by Eastman's Hunting Journals. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I've got a return guest that last time I had him on the show, I really enjoyed the conversation, and I feel like you guys really enjoyed it as well because I got a ton of messages and feedback on that episode. And it's a guy that is he's involved with one of my favorite platforms out there. And I was fortunate enough to run into him at the expo a couple weeks ago down in Salt Lake. We didn't get to hang out much, though. I only saw him for a few minutes. So anyways, welcome back, Kevin Estela with Fieldcraft Survival. How you doing, brother?
Fantastic, Jim. And, maybe it was good that we didn't get a chance to hang out all that much because I left that Western Hunt Expo with some type of chest cold, and I've been coughing like crazy. And apparently I'm not the only one. There was some type of bug that was making its way through all the exhibitors and attendees. And, I talked to Aaron Snyder from Kafaru, and he's like, yeah, it went through my office pretty bad. Yeah. And I'm still coughing every once in a while. And it's been 3 weeks since that show now.
Yeah. It was like, well, I know it was on my daughter's birthday, the second day, which is February 16th. And here it is. It's March 8th today. So yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. We all got, my wife, my two daughters, they came with me. We all got something, and like sore throat and coughing and congestion. Mm-hmm. So I just think, when you get that many people and it's winter, it's just gonna, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, you have everyone flying around. Like I flew back to North Carolina that Sunday, and I was in front of more people all that week, and the following weekend out in South Carolina teaching at Soronex. So who knows? I'm probably like patient zero, the source monkey from Outbreak. I probably spread that across the country through the airport. And I'm sure the other folks that attended that show did the same type of thing wherever they traveled to.
Man, see how you are. See how you are. That reminds me, man. Last time you were on the show, you had just moved to North Carolina, and we kind of briefly
Yes.
touched on this when we spoke at the expo there. Um, how is it out there? You've moved back now. Now it's been what, a year and a half or so. How you liking it out there?
I love it out here. I mean, to the point where I purchased the house out here, a home, and I closed on it in November. North Carolina, I moved out here because family is still on the East Coast. In 2022, it had some family medical issues, and it was difficult to get from Utah to Connecticut. But it's very easy for me to drive up the coastline now. While I was out here, over the past year and a half, I mean, the office has changed so much with personnel coming and going. But one thing that's been very constant is the interest and the popularity of the courses. I mean, there's no doubt about it here in North Carolina. I'm surrounded by 35 million people. And if I travel a little bit further south to Florida, there's 21 million people. And if I travel a little bit further north, I mean, the population density is out here. So
Yeah.
as far as a location for training, it is ideal. I can't say the same is true out in Utah or the flyover states, because by the time you get to a class in Utah, you have to pay for a hotel, a rental car, a flight, and now a $250 or a $350 class becomes well over $1,000 endeavor. But overall, I love it here. I mean, I'm really going to get into the coastal fishing this year. I didn't get a chance to fish on the coastline once last year. Finally this year, I was able to get into the deer hunting season. I showed up last year or 2 years ago, right as it was ending, and I missed out on my opportunity to do any deer hunting. But I had a great season, went out a handful of times, and on one day took two deer on one day. It was what a great day. But North Carolina is really growing on me, and I love this area. I love the people. I think they're super genuine and friendly and real. So, long answer to your question, it's fantastic.
So positive, all overall positive move. I'm always curious because where are you at in North Carolina again? I thought you were like near Charlotte somewhere, but I'm not sure.
I'm a little bit northeast of Charlotte. I'm in Moore County. Aberdeen is where the office is located.
Okay. So yeah, and I'm always interested in that because I think I told you this last time. I was stationed out in North Carolina at Camp Lejeune there, and it was like this weird transition for a kid that grew up out west. In fact, in Utah, with all this public land and the mountains and 10,000-foot elevations and coastal North Carolina. I always described it to people back home. It's like Kansas with a bunch of trees. It's just so flat. But then as you go out, we used to load up on the weekends and head out to Charlotte. They had this really cool, when you're in the military, young, that we drive a few hours to this really cool bar outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so they had live shows and stuff out there. But it was way different. It's like North Carolina has a lot of disparity between like the coastal areas versus western North Carolina and the Smoky Mountains. And one thing I've been noticing too, and this comes from just kind of watching and listeners sending me in like some of the stuff they've been doing out in North Carolina. They have some big ass black bears out there, man. Like the bear hunting there is pretty good. Is that something that you have ever been interested in getting into with? I know you do a lot of hunting, but what about bear hunting?
Okay, so I had an opportunity this year and I screwed it up. I should have gone hunting with the Price brothers, who, if you haven't podcasted the Price brothers out of Pennsylvania, you need to. Ryan and Scott Price are legendary with their hunting. They have a lot of bear records, and they're good friends of mine through the Sayak tribe, through the organization. And the thing is, East Coast hunting, the black bear, yeah, they're big. In Pennsylvania, they still hibernate. North Carolina, the bears do not hibernate. They are active year round, and they do get pretty big.
Yeah, just feeding.
I have an opportunity. Yeah, if I have an opportunity to go bear hunting, I would love to. I mean, I did purchase a new home. So I
Yeah.
would love to have a bearskin rug. It's something that my girlfriend was like, that will look absolutely disgusting. And of course, she probably has better taste than I do in terms of like interior decorating. But that being said, I would love to go on a bear hunt. That's an animal that has always intrigued me. And, the style of hunting out here on the East Coast is so very different. I mean, even just from Connecticut down to North Carolina, like in Connecticut, the idea of putting out bait or the idea of using dogs to hunt deer, I was like, what is going on here?
I know.
Like I've never heard of this.
Yeah.
But hey, to each their own. Like you can sit in a tree stand in Connecticut, you can sit in a tree stand down here, and that's what I'm used to. But the idea of dogs is wild. So like,
It's crazy.
I'm open to doing anything once and getting the experience. So I can say that I'm not uninformed. But man, some of the stuff out here is pretty awesome.
It's so funny you say that, man. The first time the first whitetail I ever killed was in North Carolina. And
Really?
yeah. And so I'd been stationed out there. I went down to the PX on base there at Camp Lejeune. And I remember back in the day when they'd have those layaway programs and you could go like make
Mm-hmm.
these payments and then finally you pay it off and you get it. And that's what I did. I put this 30-06 on layaway on base at the PX. Had a little no name scope or whatever on it. And anyway, I did it just in time. I got it for hunting season. I go out to this area, the Croatan National Forest there in coastal North Carolina. Is not very big.
Mm-hmm.
And all these dudes were out there first thing in the morning. And what they had done is like the back of their pickup trucks, they'd mounted like, those bass fishing seats that are on like a
Yes.
bass boat. It's like they mounted them to the toolbox on the back of their truck and they'd sit there with shotguns and they'd release the hounds. And they're all telling me, they're like, man, if you don't have hounds, you're not going to get a deer out here. You're not going to get a deer. And there's actually a lot to this story, but I'll just make it super quick. So I keep driving and I wanted to get away from them and kind of use their hounds against them. Maybe their hounds had chased a deer to me because I had never even heard of hunting deer with hounds. And
Yeah.
so I go walking down this trail and no kidding, man, this 3x3 whitetail is kind of coming the other direction, and I got him. And so I when I drove out of there, I made sure I propped his head up over the side of the truck. So I'm driving by all the dudes with their that are still sitting back there that told me I'd never get one without hounds, and they're still waiting for deer to show up. and I'm driving out of there with a deer. So that was one of my favorite stories to tell because it was my first whitetail. But um, now North Carolina, is that over the counter? Do you know if that's over the counter for bears still? It was back in the day, but I don't know if this is again. I can't even believe I'm saying this. This is over 20 years ago since I've lived there and hunted there.
From what I gather, it is. I looked at the tags last year, and I did I think it's called like the all sportsman. So it's inland waters, coastal waters. It's all big game. Something that blows people away is the number of tags that you're given in a
Yeah,
given year.
yeah, that's
I
what
think
blew
I
me
could
away.
get. Yeah, I think with just rifle season, I had six, 2 bucks and 4 antlerless.
Yep.
But then if you start putting on shotgun season, muzzleloader season, bow hunting season, you could, as a single individual, you could take, I want to say it's well over 20. And that just blows my mind,
I
that
know it's
number.
crazy.
And you travel up and down the East Coast. Like my friend Scott Gossman in Maryland said that he can take, I want to say it's like 24 or 36 deer on his tag on his season too. Like the deer population out here, very healthy.
Yeah.
But what's interesting too is like the deer population. I don't know if the listeners know this. The closer you get to the Arctic, the larger they get, and the further south you get, the smaller.
Yep.
And some of them down here, you have like a beautiful, 4 point or a 6 point fully developed rack, but the body is smaller. Like it's almost like it's a miniature deer.
Yeah. Totally.
And then you'll see them on the side of the road, getting struck by cars, and the same thing. It looks like it's a fully developed deer that was kind of shrunken, like mini me.
Yeah.
You know,
Totally, man. I thought I was looking at like when I first flew out to North Carolina in the Marines, and I thought that they were like golden retrievers or something. And it's
Yeah,
funny that
yeah.
the closer you get to the coast, the smaller they get, and at least it seemed that way to me. But I think I had like a theory. I don't know if this holds any water in terms of the population in North Carolina, because you're right, there's deer everywhere. I mean, and the opportunity you have, if you, when you're looking at just buying tags to hunt, the opportunity was like insane to me. We had the sportsman's tag you can get back then, and that got you a black bear, all your fishing, upland, waterfowl. You still had to buy a duck stamp, of course, and then like 6 deer. But one thing I realized when I got there is it's not like, now this is different out in Western North Carolina from what I remember, but where I lived, there wasn't a lot of opportunity for somebody that didn't own land to hunt. And
Mm.
so like these landowners, they would either hunt it themselves, or they'd turn their properties into like these lease programs or hunting clubs or whatever. And so like the amount of people that live in North Carolina, it was like a small percentage of them that actually had opportunity to go out and get a deer. And that's one of the contributing factors to the population growth there with whitetail. But again, this is just some uneducated hillbilly coming up with a some conclusion about it. But fuck, man, I was surprised when I got out there how many deer and how small they were. I was like, holy
Yeah,
crap, man, I gotta shoot like 6 of these just to get to the 'cause I grew up mule deer hunting, and it was just
sure.
a big difference. So, but I'm glad to hear that you're liking it, man, and it's a good fit for you. And tell everybody what you do for Fieldcraft Survival, and what kind of the you have like this. You wear a lot of hats. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I wear a lot of hats at the company. When I first joined the company in January 2021, I was brought on as director of training. And one thing you're going to find out about Fieldcraft Survival is that titles change all the time, but we do the same stuff regardless of the title. I don't know if it's a marketing thing or I don't know, they don't want to pay us. I don't know, but I joined the company as director of training out in Utah, and even as director of training, someone who was coming up with courses, creating course curriculum, lining out training in different parts of the country, and obviously teaching the curriculum. That's part of what I do, and that job has followed me to North Carolina, where I'm very heavily focused on teaching survival, land navigation, defensive shotgun. So all the shotgun curriculum, all the land navigation curriculum, all the survival curriculum. And then every once in a while, I get tapped to do specialized training, whether that's private training or it is, the larger events that the company does, like rewilding and overland, mobility experience and things like that. Now, other things that I do for Fieldcraft, I'm our podcast host. So I get a chance to record podcasts on a weekly basis. To date, I've recorded well over 100. I was just looking at my list of podcasts, and I'm well over 100 right now. I'm also the lead blogger, so every week I write a different blog for the company.
You're a good.
Last
By the way, on that note, man, you're a good ass writer.
Oh, thank
You're a
you.
really good writer. I love reading between your book and the blogs and stuff. I eat this stuff up. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut
Oh,
you
thank
off.
you. No, I appreciate it, and the writing side is something that's always been a passion of mine. Long
Hmm.
before Fieldcraft, I was a magazine writer and obviously the book writer. And I used to write a lot on the various discussion boards, internet discussion boards and whatnot. And then aside from all of that with Fieldcraft, like we have an office here. And even though I am the last person working at the office full time, we have contractors that do contracting with us. But I'm the last office employee here. Like we have a full office that I have to manage and make sure that the termites don't take over. Because we are in the pine trees. But it's interesting because now I'm coordinating the survival program, nationwide, and there have been more than a handful of occasions where I've taught, say, modern survival skills up at the SIG Academy. And at the same time, on the other side of the nation, my buddy Jared is teaching modern survival skills out in Washington State. Both classes are selling out. So I know that the curriculum is good. I know that it's practical. It's reasonable. It's not doom and gloom. I'm not a fear monger when I teach people various woodsman skills that they should know. It's always from a source of power and strength. And, it's been very, very popular here. And lately, it
Yeah.
seems like the land navigation classes have been taking off to the point where, maybe it's because I live 35 minutes away from Fort Bragg, which the politically correct would say Fort Liberty, but everyone in the know still calls it Fort Bragg.
Did they change? Did they like formally change that?
Yes, they
Are
did.
you serious, man?
Yeah,
I
and
didn't know that.
it's so terrible because you're driving on the road and it will say like next turn Fort Liberty, but you can tell where someone put like a sticker over the top of the word brag, and it's like not even the same color of green on the highway. It just says Fort Liberty, but no one out here calls it Fort Liberty. It's always Fort Bragg, even though all the signs were changed. It probably cost millions of dollars to change all the stationery, all the signs, all of the letterhead, everything like that. Probably millions of dollars with the government's infinite wisdom, cowtailing to the woke mob. But
That is fucking ridiculous, man. Like
what could they have used? Yeah, what could they have used that money for? Like to help people,
and not to mention the gear. The military just went through like what 20 years of war and combat and deployments. The gear that could have been replaced for that, and just so the listeners know, like the history on that. Fort Bragg is a big army base. It's one of the main army bases on the eastern seaboard, named after a guy named General Braxton Bragg, who happened to fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. And so, in honor of that, back in the day, they would name a lot of, like, there's Fort A.P. Hill, another Confederate commander. We used to go train there as Marines, and I'm not sure if that's changed or not, but that's kind of the history of it. And now we've got this this woke culture that wants to try to judge our history from the context of modern mindset and act like we like just the thought that we can erase history. Here's how I look at it. And I don't mean to derail this, but
no,
man, it drives me crazy, dude. Like when you think about a man's life and a man's life, he goes through life doing things, making mistakes, having regrets, doing things he's proud of, and achieving these things, what he considers success. This is the same for the life of a country. And so to sit there and act like we can be this mistake-free nation where our history, where like it's beneficial to our youth to delete the fact that history has events that took place that we might not understand in the modern context, but back in those days was perfectly normal. And we're judging that and changing that. And all that is detrimental to just the knowledge that a person can have and act like that, like we're not afforded mistakes. You know what I mean? And that kind of shit, it rubs me wrong. It makes me think like when I hear about stuff like this, I just think, man, how dumb as a society have we gotten? How fucking dumb have we become? And how weak have we become where we allow that? Sorry to derail it, man.
No, but here's a really simple message for the dumb numbers that are out there, for the dumb masses. Reality check. No person living today in the United States was ever a slave. No person living in the United States right now was ever a slave owner.
Yeah.
Just going to throw that out there. So
exactly.
when you hear about people getting upset over, the Civil War, which, was terrible because you had countrymen fighting countrymen, right? And you hear people getting upset about people who were slave owners, but they were very instrumental in what they did for institutions. Because I know that up, where I came from in Connecticut, a college up there, Yale, they took down a number of statues and changed building names and so forth because of that. I mean, you can dislike a person, but still give credit to what they did, and say, look, that person, yeah, they were terrible. I mean, let's put it this way. I live here in North Carolina, not far from the largest tier 1 population of special forces dudes you're going to find. Some of them are absolutely incredible human beings. Some of them I wouldn't trust with my money. Some of them I wouldn't trust with my girlfriend. So, I'll never discredit what they did for this nation or continue to do for this nation, but there are some that I would say that guy is an amazing warfighter, not a good man.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, well, I can't never, I have to forget about this guy. it's like, look, you can appreciate some aspects of a person being and dislike others. But when you start canceling, whether you're on the right or the left side of politics, canceling is a tool of dictatorships all throughout history. And that's not what we are as a nation. And that drives me crazy when I see these folks, again, talk about this. It's the worst thing ever. It's like, you are buying into the politics of something that is so un-American right now. And it's pretty pathetic. But
that's pathetic. I love the use of the word pathetic because in that sense, and it's not even, appreciate the history, but dislike the man or whatever in my mind, because it's like, I look at in 165 years, what are we doing that people that are alive at that time are going to judge us for and act like we're creating some moral wrong? Like, it's easy for you and I to sit here. You and I, we both know slavery is unacceptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is not what a human being was put on this earth to do unto others or be done to themselves. So we can all agree that slavery in itself is an evil institution that should have never existed. And however, with that said, you look at the fact that, were you to judge the entirety of America based on the institution of slavery, you're also judging the entirety of the world at the time, because at the time that was considered morally acceptable. We don't think that's true. We don't think that that's right. But at the time, they would vehemently disagree with us. And so to judge that in an event like this Black Eye of America or whatever, instead of teach about the Black Eye, is just wrong. It's misguided, because it's really naive in a lot of ways. And so, and we can go on and on about this topic, but I think it's important. I think it's just a weak mindset, and it's ignorant. And it's also, when you look at, like, you can't honor any of the troops that fought for the South because in your mind, they were fighting for the institution of slavery. Okay, granted. I'm not one of those guys that runs around saying that, the Civil War was not about slavery. No, it absolutely was. If you took the factor of slavery out of the events of the time, the Civil War would have never happened. But people act like the whole thing, that the propagated news media and the government saying one thing but meaning another is like this brand new thing. The common soldier in the South did not strap a rifle to his shoulder to go march against the North to defend his home under the guise that he's protecting some rich man's slave. That's not what he was sold. He was sold on, hey, I'm protecting my home and my state's rights and all this stuff. And that's what 99% of the people that fought for the South in the Civil War were doing. But what they weren't told was the states' rights issue of the time was slavery. They just left that part out. So anyway, don't get me going on this, Kevin. Come on, it's early yet.
No, it's all good, and the way I look at all this, it's going to be one of those moments in our history where we're going to look back on this, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, maybe 20 years, and we're going to say, wow, like, look at the way that we were until, and I hate bringing this up, until something like another 9/11 happens that brings us together. And I really, really hate that, because I remember as a nation when 9/11 happened, the feeling of 9/12.
Yeah,
and
I remember
the
that
feeling
too.
of everyone coming together, but at what cost, right? 3,000 plus lives, American lives, innocent lives. Like, it's terrible. And that perspective is something that I never try to let go of. I always try to hold on to that, where it's like, I know where you're coming from with this, but at the end of the day, dude, like, because I've gotten into some interesting arguments with people. I'm like, end of the day, dude, really, you want to get into an argument over this? Like, can we just, like, not talk about that? Can we just move on? Can we just get past this? Because we're not going to agree, but we're still human beings. Like, let's find something we can agree on, like, and I don't need to win every argument. I need to be able to exist next to my neighbors, and there are going to be
Yeah.
some things that they're not going to like and I'm not going to like, but that's the beauty of this nation. Like, we don't have to all be in sync, because that's, again, the characteristic of a nation under a dictator, where you are afraid to think differently. And I'm okay having friends that don't like the fact that I hunt. I'm okay having friends that won't carry a gun and they know I do. I'm okay with friends that will say, look, you shouldn't be giving to charity. You should hide all your money. And it's like, well, I disagree. Like, we can do what we want in this nation. And that's what makes this nation so incredible, is our liberty. And I don't know. Like you said, we could talk about hunting, or we could keep going down this social, discussion.
I think it all ties together, because the foundation of this show is protecting the future of hunting, and keeping in mind that there is this population that has developed that is so against and offended by this lifestyle of hunting. And that bleeds into other things, the woke culture bleeds into all sorts of other things. And it's just, it's like a symptom of a greater problem, and like you said, man, like the reality is most Americans they probably have 10 things that they can fundamentally totally agree on in terms of what the greater moral good, or what the overall objective to leading a healthy life or a productive life. We're all going to agree on those things. It's this little shit that is not, I guess, like hunting is a small, people that hunt on an annual basis, they buy tags every year. That's a very small percentage of the population. But we're getting overrun by these extremists on the far other side that is just as small, if not smaller, but they're louder and they're well organized and they're well funded, and all this stuff that we talk about on this show a lot. And I couldn't agree more with what you said. I mean, hell, man, my wife and I, we have these friends that we've always considered them kind of our best friends as a couple. We've hung out with them a lot and spent a lot of time with them. Man, they're freaking flag waving Biden supporters. And if you listen to my show, you can imagine that around a campfire, that conversation can get pretty interesting. But at the end of the day, that we are Americans. We've got to find a way. We've got to find a way to simmer down on some of this woke culture and this ideology of my values are more important than your values. And because I'm emotionally intoxicated on it, I'm totally still in that phrase from my buddy Scott Rockholm. Then you have to stop living your life your way, because I disagree. I'm offended. I'm offended by Civil War statues. I'm offended by you hunting. I'm offended by you. Name your whatever, because you have a Trump flag in your yard, or you have a Biden flag in your yard. And because of that, we cannot be friends, and we can't. That's just not like our grandfathers would be laughing at us because they disagreed on a lot of things. But at the end of the day, we had this commonality, and I think that the fact that we've lost this commonality of foundationally America is a place of good, that has kind of eaten away at our society, and that because there's this large swath of the population that doesn't believe that. They look at America like we're evil and we have sins that we have to pay for, and it's justifiable from this sense, because they're offended that something happened 150 or 200 years ago, and the real painful part with that, the real bitch about it, Kevin, is they don't even know the history, and so it gets really frustrating. But
listen, the rule is all they have to do is just say it louder. And
yeah,
I'll mention your favorite president, number 46. The State of the Union was just last night, and I'm listening to the State of the Union, and I listen to it as objectively as I can, and I always do the fact checking. Like I watch the State of the Union the way that I watch a movie, where I'm the guy who's like immediately on, IMDb, and I'm looking up all the trivia and all the goofs and whatnot. Like I do deep dives into things. Well, I'm watching the State of the Union, and I'm like, okay, that maybe was a distortion of the truth. And okay, I can see where he said that, but the previous year he also cut funding. Now he's bringing the funding back. Like, we always have to be, careful what's said. But last night with the State of the Union, the whole idea was, if I yell my message, it's a stronger message. And that's not the case. I often find that people who have that tendency of presenting with that loud voice and the angry voice, it's like, just because you're saying it loud or angry does not mean that it's right.
I've been talking about Hoffman boots for a very long time. You guys know that I'm a huge fan of this company. And it's not just the great products that they make. It's the story behind the company and the people that run it. This generational family of shoemakers right here in North Idaho make some of the best hunting boots and pack boots and lineman boots and all your boot needs right in one place at hoffmanboots.com. For us hunters, I highly recommend the Explorer. And I don't care if you're running in the 6-inch or the 8-inch or the 10-inch. Personally, I love my 8-inch Explorers. They've got the Vibram sole. They are totally waterproof. There's no break-in period. Guys, you can't go wrong with Hoffman boots because you get all that without breaking the bank. So check them out at hoffmanboots.com and use promo code all caps lock Huntsman10 at checkout for 10% off and find out why I have been wearing my Hoffman boots for years and years. Don't be one of those people that have it in their mind that Savage Arms is the same firearms that your grandpa was running around with 40 years ago. It's not. Big game hunting rifles that you can count on. I love my Savage firearms. I have got the Savage 110 Hunter, and my daughter is pretty happy with this 110 Apex Hunter XP. The AccuTrigger is a really interesting little piece to this firearm, and it's a new piece of technology that if you've never tried one, you should, because it'll make you more accurate. It's a much easier, higher quality firearm than anything else I've got out there, and I've got a lot of firearms, guys, and so if you're in the market for a new hunting rifle, make sure you visit savagearms.com, because I promise you're going to find something that is accurate, easy to handle, easy to use, long range, functional, just a high quality weapon that you could take to the field and have a lot of confidence that when the time comes, you've got that Savage backing you up and you're going to be notching a tag. Check it out, savagearms.com. Let them know the Western Huntsman sent you. Thanks, guys.
You know, just because you're saying it loud or angry
because
does not make it a strong argument. It's actually
they're presenting it from a much more emotional place. They think that emotion gives their argument more credibility and it holds more water. Correct. Because of that emotion behind it. And honestly, Kevin, I've been guilty of. I've yelled on this show. I've gotten pretty fired up and worked up about things, but. And we all have that where we'll get emotionally and wrapped into whatever topic. But yeah, man, that State of the Union, it wasn't really, in my opinion, it wasn't really a State of the Union. It was like a stump speech for the Democrat Party, and it was gross in a lot of ways. We could probably make a whole episode breaking this thing down, but the whole $1 trillion in reduced deficit, no, man, that's called, we had all this crazy spending going on because of coronavirus that the government decided to pay everybody to sit at home and watch SpongeBob and reimburse all these companies for all this different stuff. That means that stuff just ended. You didn't reduce the deficit. The deficit's gotten greater. It's just, but people fall for that stuff. They fall for, the hype that is the State of the Union, because it's just not like what it was back when, like JFK. Have you ever listened to a State of the Union from JFK? That was a State of the Union address. And he's a Democrat, but he'd never get nominated today, man. He's not woke enough. And so, right. Do you feel like all this stuff that we're talking about, I wanted to bring this up because you brought it up, that your classes, like you said, the land nav classes are growing, and all these other courses. One of the courses, I'm on the Fieldcraft website here. I got to figure out how do I make this thing scroll? Anyway, I'll find it. But there's I think it's a rewilding class or course or something like that. But anyway, do you feel like the growth of Fieldcraft Survival and the platform that it is, with the information that you guys provide, whether it's martial arts or I know. For some reason, the website's not going to it now because I said something. I don't want to try to read while I'm talking, but anyway, like the homesteading course or self-reliance. That's what it was, the self-reliance course. And I think that kind of ties into homesteading. Do you think a lot of the growth is attributed to the stuff that we're talking about because a lot of people are starting to wake up to perhaps uh, the longevity factor of where our society's at? Like they're seeing these extremists take over institutions, and we all went through COVID. We saw the fragility of our supply chains and all these other things. And the one thing that I like about Fieldcraft Survival, Kevin, and why I'm bringing this question to you is this isn't like some extreme prepper platform. This is like you say in your book, 101 skills you need to survive in the woods. A trip to the grocery store can turn into a life and death scenario, right? I mean, you could run off the highway and get your car stuck in a ditch on some no name road that maybe get two or three vehicles down a road, and it's a blizzard. You might be stuck there all night. So that's kind of what you're referring to, and that's what I like about Fieldcraft Survival. This is everyday kind of stuff, everyday kind of people that could benefit from it. It's not like crazy preppers that have $5 billion to build a big bunker. I like what Mike Glover said about that. I heard him say one time, "Don't build a bunker because I can kill you with a garden hose." you know, and so all those things tying into the state of this, what we consider societal norms and what's acceptable these days, and the woke culture and the fragility of our systems. Is that what is contributing to the growth of these courses? The popularity.
Well, the year that I joined the company, I officially joined January of 2021, but the first class that I ever taught was in August of 2020. And if you think back to August 2020, you had George Floyd riots, you had coronavirus, you had a lot of different things that were going on. And there's no doubt that people were panic buying. They were panic purchasing equipment. They were looking for training. I mean, we all remember what the gun stores looked like during COVID, where the only thing left behind were, 410 shotguns. And many times that wasn't even there. It was usually like the 350 Bushmaster or something that like people couldn't find ammo for.
Yeah.
But there's no doubt that in times of crisis and times of awareness that things could go sideways pretty quickly, we do see a bump in certain classes. One of our instructors out here, Kate Smith, she does all edible medicinal plants, and Kate is the real deal when it comes to edible medicinal plants. She has 15 people signed up for her seminar in a couple weeks, and she has a repeat following because she does it 4 times a year in all 4 seasons. I mean, as legit as they come, because people are looking for alternative ways to procure food. If they can't just go to the grocery store and get it, they can say, well, I'll go down that country road and I'll find it in the ditch. I'll find it, in that wood line or whatever. There's definitely an interest, in taking classes like defensive shotgun. Before I joined Fieldcraft, there was no shotgun course at Fieldcraft. Jerry Young and I created the curriculum, and we've sold out courses. We've had great turnout at courses, Utah, North Carolina, and people are realizing, wow, like here's another viable tool that if I run out of ammo for my AR-15 for whatever reason, I know how to run I know how to run a shotgun well. And I run it very, very fluently because, I've been practicing with it. So we're seeing that is definitely the case with courses, but then people talk too, when you come to a course and you talk to the people next to you and you realize, wow, this guy isn't that crazy prepper, or this guy isn't or this woman isn't the person who is wearing the tinfoil hat. People show up as strangers and they leave as friends. So they go and they tell someone, and next thing you know, it's word of mouth. I definitely think the podcast helps. I think the blog helps. The YouTube channel helps. All the social media, and one thing just feeds another, and then back and forth, from product to social media to courses. But I think we're coming up on a very busy training season. As we get closer to the election, you will see more people getting involved in firearms courses, getting involved in survival classes, getting involved in courses anytime that the word EMP is brought up or a Chinese weather balloon flies over the country. Like, there's no doubt an interest in, wow, we are vulnerable. What can I do to become stronger and less susceptible to any type of attack, whether that is from a foreign entity or something domestic, but then also how do I become stronger in case I just happen to be a victim of a car breaking down, like you said.
Yeah. Kevin, what's your take on those Chinese weather balloons, man? Like those are always obviously they're sketchy. I don't even know what to think of them though.
Okay, so I'm going to bring this one way back to 1997. In 1997, a I was a delegate, so to speak, a delegate from my high school at Boys State. Boys State is put on by the American Legion. It is a mock government that, you name it, many presidents have gone to it, and you get a chance to learn all about political process. You get a chance to learn about Robert's Rules of Order. You meet with various government officials, NGO officials, and so forth. Like, it's very interesting. Well, we had an FBI agent who showed up in 1997, and the FBI agent is up in the front of the room, and there's an open mic, and it's like, all right, gentlemen, do you have any questions? And remember, this is all a bunch of guys, 17-year-old kids. There were many questions about aliens, which was funny because just when you would think that there is not going to be another question about aliens, a kid would start off with like, given the crisis that we're in, with the political instability, do you think there are aliens? And it was one of those things where the guy was just getting tired of it. But one of the questions that always has stood out to me was a student or an attendee said, "Are you guys spying on us?" Okay. It was something to that effect.
Interesting. Okay. And this is 97. So that, yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Okay. Now I'm going to say something that will blow your mind. The FBI agent said, "I can't tell you what our current capabilities are, but I can tell you what we were capable of doing in 1980. He said in 1980, we had the ability to read the word Titleist on a golf ball from outer space."
Are you serious?
Yeah, he said that was in 1997. So in 1997, they were able to still do that, but more.
Yeah.
And, when we think about like spy culture in movies, they're like, oh, the resolution is coming through, or, oh, the image is clearing up. Like, that's for Hollywood effect. Whatever that spy balloon captured, it didn't disappear when the Air Force jet shot it down away. The Atlantic.
Yeah.
It was sent in real time back to China. And who knows what it was picking up because it was destroyed. You know what I mean? Like, what was destroyed? There's no record of it.
Wouldn't it have been better to like capture that balloon somehow and bring it down?
If it's even possible to do that.
I mean, if they could read Titleist on a golf ball in the year that I was born, I'm pretty long in the tooth. I was born in 1980, and that's so, it's bizarre. Like, so I'm in. I was telling you before we started recording here. I have a little roofing company, right? And so I don't measure roofs, man. I don't get up there and measure roofs. I have a program that has satellite imagery that zooms in on somebody's house, and I can count how many pipe flashings they have, how big their chimney is. I could tell what pitch their roof is. I could almost see the condition of the roof before I even get there. That's how advanced. It's wild. It's wild stuff, and that's not new, man. I've been able to do that for like almost a decade, and so that's crazy. I wouldn't have thought that they could do that in 1980. So it's like scary. And that was his response to, "Are you guys spying on us?" Well, let me put it to you this way. We could have.
Yeah. And he was cool. And we had some interesting other guest speakers. We had a guy from the Food and Drug Administration who said, "Did anyone here drink fruit juice today at lunch or orange juice?" And all these kids are like, yeah. He goes, "Do you know that there's an acceptable amount of rat feces allowed in your beverages? Do you know that there's an acceptable amount of insect organic matter?" And every kid in the room is like, oh. He goes, "But remember, when you have that limited amount and you pasteurize it, you're killing but still, it was one of those things where we were just blown away. Here's another flip side to that coin, right? And just kind of bringing up the strange world that we live in. So we know that there is this technology that's available. And one of the things that I'm doing on the side right now is I've been helping out this organization called the TOA Group, TOA Group, right? And TOA is Samoan for warrior. Well, one of the things, because of my background as a history teacher, I've been working with this group to do independent third party reviews of school security. And it's interesting because when you go and you speak to school officials, and I mean, I sat in the room across from the school security expert, and I sat in the room across from the sheriff and the local police chief and EMS coordinator and the superintendent of schools. Well, what was said was, well, in a school shooting, we have the ability at the emergency communication center to overlay the blueprint of the school on Google Map of the school, and we can send that to officers. And we were writing this down. We're like, okay. So then we went.
Wait. So you can overlay.
Oh,
You've got the
I'm going to
high
get
school.
I'm going to get
Okay.
to
I'll
it.
just okay.
So we're like, wow, that's really incredible. Like, there's this program that lets you see the blueprint of every floor. Like, I'm thinking this is like 24 Jack Bauer type of stuff, right? Like where the things are all like 3D and animated and whatnot.
Yeah.
So we go to the emergency communication center that allegedly has this capability of being able to overlay blueprints on Google Earth. And we said, hey, can we see a demonstration of that? And the guy said, he goes, I would love to show you this right now. But number one, we've been hacked and we are not able to run at full capacity because someone is controlling our 911 call center ransomware.
What the fuck, man? Seriously?
And he goes, and two, that technology does not exist. So it's interesting because there's such a misunderstanding of what people are capable of doing. And now when you look at things like Uvalde and Parkland, and you look at these school shootings that are happening, where you're like, how come they're not rushing in? It took 77 minutes for those cops to go into that one school shooting. 77 minutes. Well, there is so much, I should say, lack of communication and lack of inter-office collaboration. Like, the school resource officers don't get a chance to work with state troopers. They don't get a chance to work with local EMS and whatnot. People aren't making these conversations happen. And yet, this is all this technology that could potentially be there. Like, we know that some of this technology is out there. It's not given to the people that actually need it, or they don't know how to use it. And it's like, why is there that gap in understanding? Like, why can't we do something with this? It blows my mind that we're letting spy balloons go overhead and we're not addressing, basic communication at the local level with school safety.
Yeah. No, man, you nailed it. It's like, hold on one sec. My microphone is for some reason hotter than a firecracker here. It's about blowing my eardrums out. There we go. I can't imagine, like, I think the technology exists, like they're flying these balloons over, right? And they low teched it to sneak it past whatever they needed to get it over the mainland. But I'll bet you they could hear conversations that people are having from that balloon, and able. I don't know if there's thermal imagery. I don't know what kind of data they're getting, but I was listening to it was Rogan's show, and he had freaking, of all people, Dr. Phil on. And he's talking about how the Chinese own all this land around all the military institutions throughout, like, the Midwest, and, well, not just throughout the United States. And so you've got this is why I get alarmed. And again, this is coming from Dr. Phil is not exactly known to be some tinfoil hat wearing prepper that has a bunker. Maybe he does have a bunker and he doesn't say, I don't know. But, I look at him. He's the guy that when your teenager's fucked up, he's going to fix the teenager, right? He's not somebody that comes on a show and talks about this stuff. But I mean, if he's concerned, I don't know much about him. I've actually never seen a Dr. Phil show, but he's one of those people that everybody, if you live in the United States, you just kind of know who he is. And you've heard a lot of his expressions and seen clips of him and whatnot. And so I'm listening to this, and that's what struck me about it was, okay, so we've got this wide open border, right? So people coming across from all 7 continents. freely, basically, and given a Visa card or a MasterCard or whatever the hell those credit cards are the government decided to give out. The Chinese own land around all our military institutions, plus all this other agricultural interface that they own throughout the Midwest. And they've got spy balloons flying across the country. They're releasing these viruses that have been safe in their testing facilities for many years, and suddenly they're out in the public, and there's like this new. I swear I get a headline on my phone at least twice a month. Some new virus in China is threatening humanity or whatever. And so it's not like it's just one thing, Kevin. It's like a bunch of things that make dudes that like me that are not normally uptight about the future pretty fucking uptight about the future. And the more the older I get, the more alarmed I become, and this is partly why my wife and I live out in the sticks like we do, and we raise our own meat, and we grow our own food, and we hunt for our own food, and we try to be as self-sustainable as we can. I have lots put into this lifestyle that we live in, and we enjoy it too. It's healthy, it's freeing, it's liberating. But when you take all those factors, it when you compound that, like credit card interest with the Middle East issues, with the Gaza Strip and Israel, and then Ukraine and Russia, and I'm alarmed. Should I be alarmed? What is somebody in your shoes that is in? I mean, you work at a company called Fieldcraft Survival. You guys teach people everything from land nav to building fires to self-reliance and self-sufficiency to survival techniques. If you get stranded on the highway, and everything in between, which is why I love your program. What is a guy who's in this kind of conversation on a daily basis? What do you see as what we need to be alarmed about? Does that make sense how I asked that? That was like chaotic.
It absolutely does, right? Because when we look at it, there's definitely like a magnitude to all of the compounding issues, right? Tension in the Middle East, southern border, opioid crisis in the country. Like it goes on and on.
Yeah, the opioid,
right?
yeah.
Not everything. It starts stacking up. It starts weighing on. Well, I was just at a training event this past week in West Virginia, put on by the Securit Safe Company, where we went out and we did testing in a shoot house where we're drawing pistols from safes and using them against guys in UTM outfits, and we're all padded up in UTM. It was force on force training. It was awesome. But one of the attendees at that event, very religious man, and I'm religious. I just don't wear it on my sleeve as much.
Yeah, me
too. He said, do you know that the words "fear not" appears the most in the Bible? And we started talking about this for quite some time. He said the words "fear not" appear the most in the Bible. And I was like, that's a really interesting take. It's a hot take because it's so easy to be led down a path of fear. And there are people out there that are fear mongers that will say, well, you don't have your tinfoil hat. You're going to die because of it. And like, you let fear take over. Well, if you're being told by a divine power to fear not, well, instead of fear, what can you do? You can educate yourself. You can become stronger and say, I'm not going to fear. I'm going to have a rational process for deciding if something is both possible and probable as a threat. Now, Let's put it this way. Have I ever seen a car crash? Oh, yeah. I've been in car crashes. I can address my vehicle safety right now. I can make sure I get in the habit of putting a seatbelt on. I can make sure that I always, before I leave my house, fill up my water bottle and I put it next to my bag, next to the door. So I never break the habit of going to my vehicle without a go bag, right? My everyday carry bag. And I make that habit easy to follow and not break on a daily basis. I then can look at everything else under this umbrella of a potential fear, a potential worry that we could have. And I could say, is it possible? Is it probable? Now, is it possible that there is a nuclear strike on the eastern seaboard in Moore County right where I am, 35 minutes away from Fort Bragg. Oh, it is absolutely possible. Is it probable? I mean, I'd like to put faith in our armed forces that could detect it and do something about it. And what can I do about it? Well, I know that if there were a nuclear attack, you really can't defend all that great against it if you just don't have that infrastructure here, or if you try going to the same place that everyone else is going to. So, I mean, there's a reason for everything. Again,
Yeah.
fear not. It's so easy to get overwhelmed. And even as someone who lives in this space every day, and I have people that message me about, well, what about this? What about this? And what about that? Like, if you think about it, for me, like I've gone more gray than I was when I first started at Fieldcraft, just because I'm hearing so much on a daily basis. And it can be very unhealthy spiritually and physically to live with this constant state of fear. But I think the important thing is to take and turn that fear into something else, turn it into resolve. And I think that is the more important message. Like, instead of listening to fear, fear not. Instead of listening to fear, be resourceful, do something that will actually make a difference. Because what is fear? Fear is a mental process. Fear is an emotional investment. Right now, show me that you fear. There's nothing, right? Like, you're not making anything, you're not doing anything. You might shit your pants, but you know what I mean? Like, aside from that, show me something productive. It's not practical. It's not useful to fear. You just have to put trust in something else. You have to put trust and faith, and you have to live in a way where you say to yourself, what can I turn this fear into? How can I address this fear? How can I beat the fear that I have? Because that's what I should be doing as a human being.
I love that, man. That actually that helps me because I think I've gotten caught up sometimes where I feel like maybe I'm getting a little too fearful over something that's not necessary. Instead of being worried about it, focus on being prepared for it, and focus on being reactive and proactive instead of having to be reactive if it is something catastrophic, and it's stuff I think about all the time. What do you think? I want to go back to something you said. What do you mean by day bag and your day bag? Like, what would you recommend people have in a day bag that you never leave home? Or is that stuff that that you can only get out of your class?
No. So I pride myself on the finest low budget media content for Fieldcraft Survival possible, right? And it's because
I love it.
I come from two parents that they grew up. One came from a war torn country. The other one was my late mother was the child of a Great Depression woman who made hooch in her bathtub, right? So, like,
oh, wow.
I pride myself on low budget content and low cost for admission, so to speak, solutions to problems, right? Like, the Fieldcraft of Utah can deal with $400,000 overland vehicles and things like that. I just put up a video of my 183,000 mile Forerunner, and people responded to it. They're like, wow, this is actually real. And it's like, that's what I am. I'm as real as it gets.
That's like not even half the lifespan of a Toyota.
That's right. So the reason I'm bringing up my low budget content and I'm bringing up all this is because last year at this time, I was out at Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio, and I was working with our guys. We just got done filming Lee Ellis and Maggie Fisher, and we started podcasting all these POWs that were in the Hanoi Hilton. Well, we just got done with that. We're in the hotel room and we're waiting to go out with my buddy John Maynard from Badger Claw Leather. So we're waiting to go, and I was like, hey, you guys want to do a quick video on the bag that I carry every day? And they're like, yeah, man, let's do that. So they just set up the lights in the room, and it's me in a pair of like athletic shorts and a big oversized t-shirt. Like, I'm just hanging out until I am ready to shower and go out with my buddy. And I'm just going through my backpack being like, hey, look, this is the bag that I carry every day to work. I never leave the house without it. Here's what I carry and why. That video, I just checked it today, has 250,000 views.
Dang, man.
Yeah, there's so many comments. And it's the whole idea of like, it's just an extension of your pockets. So I carry Swiss Army and ferro rod in the right front pocket, a lighter on the left front pocket. I carry certain gear on me, but that gear only goes so far. So the backpack's the extension of the pockets. So in that video, I explained, look, I carry some food in case I need to, eat throughout the day. It's better to have it and not need it than need it, not have it. I carry tied small individual packets. So if I ever am stuck at a hotel, I get a layover and I want to do my laundry, I can do my laundry in the sink and I can hang it up to dry in front of the air conditioner and I'll have clean clothing in the morning. And I just go through like all this practical stuff. Like I carry a spare set of socks because I've been on a range where it's rained cats and dogs and my feet have been wet and it feels so damn good before you drive home to put on a pair of dry socks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I just go through all this practical stuff that I carry in my bag and it resonated with people. I was like, that's the stuff that we need to hear. Like
it's okay practical stuff. It's practical stuff that like not, I love the way you put it in your, well, I'll get there in a minute.
Yeah.
I want to come back to the book. What's that video called, Kevin?
It's, hold on. I can pull it up on my phone as we're talking about it. It's like, I think it says like survival instructors everyday carry bag. Let me get the exact,
because I think that'd be a good video for me to link in the show notes, because that's the kind of stuff. It's that practical stuff that, information that people don't have that would be really helpful. When you listen to, I want people to get something out of this kind of podcast. And
yeah, it's travel EDC with survival expert Kevin Estela. Now,
travel EDC. With travel expert or survival
expert Kevin Estela, which I hate the term survival expert. I don't mind saying I'm an authority, but I don't like that term expert because it makes it seem like there's nowhere else to go. And I'm always learning. I'm always training. I'm always learning. So I don't like the term expert, but I'll use it if I need it for the industry, like SME or whatever. But I always say I'm an authority. I'm not an expert.
Well, it's interesting that you put it that way. One of the things that that always stood out to me with your book. Again, the book is called 101 Skills You Need to Survive in the Woods. And for you guys listening, if you don't have that book, it's one of those books that you should have. You should read it, and then you should put it on your shelf, because in a worst case scenario, let's say we were talking about EMPs and stuff like that, and supply chain issues and things like that. The internet's down. The information that is in that book, you can get it on Amazon or what, you can probably get it off the Fieldcraft Survival website, right?
It should be on the Fieldcraft Survival website. I know it's definitely available on Amazon. It's available at Barnes and Noble. I always tell people, like, if you want a signed copy, just email me and it's $25. I'll drop it in the mail. Good to go.
Yeah, see, that's what I wanted. I wanted to, you had a bunch at the expo and I'm like, okay, I got to go back and see Kevin so he could sign my book. And then I saw you a couple times, but you were always busy or I was busy or whatever. And so, because our booths were right next to each other. Anyway, so I feel like I've got this empty book here, Kevin, that has no signature in it, and I'm heartbroken. But one of the things you were talking about in the book, and I think it's like in your intro, where it's like, this is just practical stuff for everyday people that don't need to be attached to a cause with it. Like, you're not some cult leader, or there's not some spiritual connection as to why you're writing this book. You're not looking to gain some spiritual or cult-like following. I don't know if I'm explaining this right, but it is just a practical guide for everybody that can benefit from it. And it's like useful information without some hidden agenda. Does that make sense? Did I explain that right?
It's been quite some time since I've read my own book. I haven't read my introduction. I usually do my introduction in classes, and I don't even know if I quote my own book, but it all comes from the teaching of my late mentor, Marty, who, when Marty would introduce the survival class, he would say, listen, this is not a class grounded in spirituality. It's not a class grounded in native awareness. I am going to teach you hard skills. You have all the rest of your life to find your meaning for life in the woods. You have all the rest of your life to make a connection with a tree if you want to. But for now, let's get through the skills. And the skills are conceptual and they can apply for an emergency, or it just heightens your enjoyment of the great outdoors when you're camping with your family. And you can either show off or you can practice a skill that should make you feel good because you're doing a skill set that means you don't have to take out a particular item from your pack because you're carrying more knowledge to do more with less.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for everybody listening, I want to, let me pull this back up here. I just want to read like the bullet points as to what's in this book. You start out with fire skills, and which, by the way, man, the amount of people that need to read those chapters or that chapter is incredible because it blows my mind. Those of you going up to elk camp, quit trying to light these big round logs that are still green. It drives me it's one of my pet peeves. Anyway, fire skills. Shelter skills, shelter making skills, and you go through several different types of shelters and whatnot, and different types of for those of you if you're out hunting, you get lost, turned around, your Onyx stops working, something like that. These are the types of skills that if you know them, are going to get you through that. Knife skills, cordage skills, illumination skills, navigation skills, signaling and communication skills, first aid and trauma skills. Water skills, so basically gather water, make it drinkable. Food gathering skills, and there's so much information in this book, and it's again, it's simplified and it's practical that everybody should have a copy of this book. Can I ask you a question? I read the land nav part. When you're teaching land nav, is there like a big difference between how you teach it in like coastal North Carolina versus the West, where the maps may differ with contour lines kind of thing?
So there are some key differences. The first difference you're going to find between North Carolina and Utah, so to speak, is that the Western states have eastern declination and the eastern states have western declination. Because what that means is that there's the agonic line, which runs through somewhat of the center of the United States. And that's where if we were to hold a compass, magnetic north and true north are lined up perfectly. Now, on the East Coast, magnetic north tends to pull to the west. And on the West Coast, magnetic north pulls to the east. So there is a difference there. And if I were to just teach the same GM angle formula, which is how we do a conversion from magnetic north, from going from your compass to your map and from your map to your compass. If I were to teach it the same way in North Carolina as I do out in Utah, I would have people off by close to 30 degrees. The other difference is going to be in the contour interval. So out in Utah with 10,000 foot mountains, you're going to have a 40-foot contour interval wherever you go, usually. Mm-hmm. Yep. And here in North Carolina, we might have 10 feet or 20 feet. Yeah. So the distance between the contour lines is going to vary significantly because the height of the mountains out west is so much higher. The other thing you're going to find out west is that you're going to have much more pronounced, very pronounced major features. And if you guys remember the 5 major features, Hidden Valley Ranch salad dressing. So hilltop, valley, ridgeline, saddle, and D is draw. Okay, so Hidden Valley Ranch salad dressing. Well, out west they're so much more pronounced. On the East Coast, they're kind of blended, and like you have to really look for those draws because the draw might only be 20 feet tall, but it's very subtle, and on the map it's going to appear a certain way. So it's similar. It's not exactly the same because there are going to be some key differences, but it's all conceptual. I mean, I can show a person what a hilltop looks like on a map, and I can show someone what a ridgeline looks like on a map, and it will look exactly the same whether that ridgeline happens to be at 6,000 feet or 10,000 feet or 3,000 feet. It's going to still appear the same way on those contour lines.
Interesting, man. I've always wondered that because when I was initially trained on land nav, it was at Camp Pendleton, California. And when I got to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, I kind of struggled with it, and I couldn't figure out why I would get off course. And other than, again, simpleton hillbilly kind of dude, I get out there and I'm like, here's what my problem is, Jim. There's no fucking mountains. I can't look
Yeah,
at that mountain. I know
so
that
true.
mountain's northwest, and coastal North Carolina, man, all you see are trees. I mean, it's just it's so flat, and so it took some getting used to. But I love the fact that you guys. I know Snyder does some land nav stuff too, and you guys do it, and man, it's so critical for, especially for a lot of you guys that are just getting into hunting, and maybe it's going to be your first time in the backcountry, and you've had this reliance on like an Onyx or some kind of digital map, but things can happen. My buddy Andrew, who didn't grow up in the mountains, this is kind of a guy. He was a city kid, and he started going hunting. And what happened was he was relying on his Onyx. Well, it started raining, and he like dropped his phone and cracked his screen, and so Onyx, he couldn't zoom in or zoom out. It wasn't helping him any, and it was just call it God's intervention or whatever. He got back to his truck, but it was a very long night for him. And so it's stuff like that you never know. You phone can slip out of your pocket,
Mhm.
and you don't know it, and for 3 miles later, it's just critical information to know. Do you have anything to add to that?
So Aaron Snyder came out to North Carolina. He was kind of like the grand finale of the guest instructor series that we did last year.
Uh-huh.
I brought out multiple guest instructors. I had Hobo Forge, Jason Smith, who I'm actually going to see tomorrow, former SEER instructor. He did all primitive survival. I had Alan Odinson do all primitive archery. Awesome dude. I had Aaron Snyder out, and we did a Western hunting kind of prep class. So Aaron and I,
For Easterners, right?
for Easterners,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Oh, cool.
so Aaron and I, we tag teamed a land navigation class, and Aaron and I are good friends. Like we BS with each other all the time, and I took it as a compliment when Aaron was like, "It's like Kev." He goes, "I geek out on this." He goes, "You really geek out on this." He goes, "The extent of what I need to know is if I travel along this azimuth and I go 4 miles and I follow that azimuth and I'm looking for this catch feature and these handrails and whatnot." He's like, "I'll find a lake." Right? He goes, "You're teaching people to travel 4 miles to find a freaking water bottle."
Yeah.
He's like, "You really geek out on this." But then again,
I
like
could
that's
see
what
it just like the way your eyes light up when we start talking land nav, dude. I could tell you really geek out on it. I
I do.
hated it when I was in the service, but I value it.
Yeah, and it's fun because it it's a superpower. Like I always tell people, if you
Hmm.
want to do Mel Gibson in the Patriot type of shit, where you're like sneaking through the woods, killing redcoats, maybe not killing redcoats, but if you want to sneak through the woods or have the capability to sneak through the woods with just a tool and an understanding of terrain features and a map, like it is a superpower. And then you can do all of it under low light conditions, and you can do all of it under no light conditions. Like it's really, really interesting stuff.
Super
And
interesting.
yeah, and I think it's a skill set that is going away because people rely on technology. And
Hmm.
when I think fieldcraft, I think like what are the skills you need to operate in the field? What are the skills you need to get from point A to point B to be effective? And land nav is definitely one of them.
I couldn't agree more. I love it. And I kind of want to, why don't we, in fact, real quick, summarize some of the training, like that, especially you, Kevin, that you focus on Fieldcraft. Um, Give us like an overview of training that is available, what you think is critical, and where some of those that training can be found.
Okay, so big picture, Utah, North Carolina, Phoenix, Colorado. Those are the big ones. That's where we have, various trainers located. So Utah, North Carolina, Phoenix, and Colorado. We're
Okay.
looking to expand into Dallas, Texas. We're looking to expand into, different parts of the nation, but those are the big ones right now, those four. Now, that being said, if you're on the East Coast, you are closer to me than you realize. Um, you can get from North Carolina to Connecticut in 12 hours. And if you're a
Hmm.
training junkie like me, might as well drive down, sleep in your car. You can hang out in the parking lot. I'll come down, we'll drink a beer, maybe after the training and not before. But you know, those are the four locations. Now, of those 4 locations, there's survival training, which I head up, and that's survival, land nav, and defensive shotgun is in the curriculum. At some point, I plan on offering practical rifle, where it is positional rifle shooting, standing, kneeling, prone, uh, crouched. And for those of you that have scout rifles, we'll get into Hawkins prone. But then also we'll play games of practical rifle horse and so forth. So 22 rifle, practical rifle, centerfire rifle, shotgun, land nav, survival. That's all me. Like, I'll get you ready for hunting. Then we have the mobility side. That's Mikey Hernandez. We have med. Nate Jones. Doc Jones is our lead med guy. So if you want to do any physical med training, Doc Jones is going to be the one to get you squared away.
And why do you call him? Is that never mind. I'm asking dumb questions. Doc Jones.
Is he really a doctor? No, he's not a doctor, but
but like in the Marines, we had corpsman and we called him Doc, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I'm just curious if that's.
Yeah, so he's a Army medic, and that's why we call him Doc Jones. But Nate Jones is our medic.
Okay.
And then we have medical instructors in all those locations, in Colorado, in Arizona, in Utah, and here in North Carolina.
Dude, I'm offended you don't have somebody in Montana to come see me.
Man, Montana, listen, Glover had an idea at one point. He's like, we got to move the operation to Bozeman. It's like, Mike, do you realize how expensive the flights are into Bozeman? No one is traveling to Bozeman. There's 50,000 people that live in Bozeman. Let's think before we make a brash decision.
Bozeman is not real Montana. Okay. Bozeman is where all the non-Montana. No, I'm kidding. Now I'm going to get a bunch of hate mail, man. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry.
No problem. So getting back to the original question, like the other thing we do is all the firearms training. Here in North Carolina, I always say Rick Lofton, one of my good friends. Rick is one of the most humble operators I have ever met. Does not talk about what he did, but let's just say this. Rick was the tip of the spear, the tier 1 of the tier 1 of the Army, if you're catching my drift, for over 12 years, when most guys wash out after 5. And Rick was and is one of the best firearms instructors I've ever seen. I've trained with him a bunch of times. I love Rick Lofton. If I could wear a t-shirt that had Rick Lofton's face on it, I would. He's that good.
I mean, he's I can design that shit for you.
Yeah. But it would have to be him playing with his beard, because that's one of his little things that he does. He's one of the most calculating guys I've ever met.
I love it.
And I'll tell you, a lot of those guys in that unit, they've said to me, they're like, we'd love to talk to some of the folks at Fieldcraft, love to do some stuff with them. And it's like, I'll see what I can do. So yeah, it's really cool knowing some of those guys now that did some amazing stuff for this country, that are super supportive of everything that I'm doing and plan to do. So yeah, we've got the firearm side of the house. And then on top of all of that, we've got all these like crazy things that we do, like the rewilding class, the mobility experience. Can
you describe what is the rewilding class? Give us like a synopsis of that one.
I can't really say a lot about it because it's deliberately not mentioned too much. But if you read the book, The Comfort Crisis, then you'll understand what Mike is trying to go for.
I have read that book. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what Mike is trying to go for with that class. I've taught it once before. It was 110 degrees. I still have the photo of the the thermometer out in Utah. It was freaking hot. But it's kind of like a back to the stones and bones type of thing where you're getting into your roots, kind of like a primal reset, so to speak. Yep. So yeah, that's that class. But then out in Utah, they do all these different seminars where, they've got a 10,000 square foot facility, and, Greg Lappin just had Tim Kennedy and had 100+ people on the mat for jujitsu with Tim Kennedy.
Oh, wow. Sweet.
100+ people, right?
Heck yeah, man.
And Greg's a good dude, and I wish him all the best out there in Utah. He definitely will need it with all the crazies, but
totally.
Yeah. But yeah, there's just so much that we're doing. We have a whole online app now, where it's kind of like Netflix for Fieldcraft Survival, different seasons. So we've got that going on. We've got, just one thing after another.
So I just want to talk about that. You've got the This is the one I was asking you about, the Ultimate Self-Reliance Guide. It looks like it's a digital course, which you guys have a lot of digital options as well. For any of you that can't get to I'd highly recommend the in-person stuff, but there are digital options as well. But that looks really intriguing. In fact, I actually emailed it to my wife since we've been sitting here talking, because we eat that kind of stuff up. And I kind of want to I want to ask you this. I know. Are you okay on time for just a minute? I don't want to keep you too much longer. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm good.
I just want to ask you this. Like, you're one of the people I look to, Kevin, when I think of like mindset and the correcting maybe skewed mental weaknesses. I don't even know if I'm explaining this right, but you've always come across to me as somebody who's very strong mentally, and that has given you this perception that you have clarity as to why you do this. Can you explain that, or can you expand on that at all?
Absolutely.
I've got to stop the video for just a sec because I
Yeah.
think the internet's cutting out, but we're still good. Go ahead.
Okay. So a strong mindset comes from having a strong code. And you hear people use the term honor, and honor is so misunderstood. And to have honor means that you live by a code. You have something that you believe in, and you don't deviate from those ideas. And unfortunately, we live in a society where people will often resort to this. Well, that's what I said, but it's not what I meant. Or
Oh,
do as
yeah.
I say, not as I do. Right? If you have a strong code, then all of your actions are almost predictable by anyone on the outside who knows your code. Where it's like, what comes first in your life? Is it work, family? Is it God, country, career? What is your code? What is your priority? And what order do you want them to be in? Sadly,
Man,
people don't.
that's a
Yeah,
great way to put that. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to cut you off. That's a
no, no,
great
no,
way to
no.
put that. It's kind of like into perspective, like we know Dave Ramsey's not going to get a credit card, right? That's his code.
Hmm.
And so that's a great way to put that, like the predictability of it. Sorry, go ahead. I
Yeah,
continue. Yeah.
yeah. So, like over the years, I've thought about like what is my code? Like what do I stand for? Right. And if you look at the book and who I dedicated my book to, number one, it starts with my dad. Right. My dad wanted me to never stop learning, be a student for life. So that whole passion for education came from my dad. That is one of my codes. I will never, ever tell someone that they can't learn something. I will tell them maybe they're not allowed to learn something because proprietary or whatever it may be, but you should never stop learning. You should never stop trying to find the the best version of an answer you can get, right? Like certain things you'll never be able to learn. It's just top secret or whatever. But that being
Like
said,
that
like,
rewilding class.
well, yeah, well, I mean, you can go to it. You got to pay what, 2,500 and 3,200, whatever it is. Like
I don't know. I didn't
that's
see it.
Mike's deal. It's not mine. But here's the thing: like education is part of my code. Then I look at someone like Marty Simon. Marty Simon, my survival mentor. Marty was very much a believer in resourcefulness. Marty was someone who believed that, you our motto was always prepared, prepared always. And it was the idea that with a handful of knowledge and gear, you can apply it to pretty much anything in your life. And then, of course, there's Sayak, right? Filipino martial arts. The founder of the system was the late Chris Sayak, an amazing mentor, an amazing friend who inspired me to write the book. And he really taught me, like, embrace strength. Whenever you can, choose strength over weakness. Be the feeder is our expression, right? The feeder is the one who's in control. Don't ever let yourself be in a position where someone else is dictating your beliefs. And I'll tell you, like, it's not easy sometimes because, again, you may be told, well, if you don't do XYZ, you're going to be out of a job. Well, a receiver would say, well, I guess I have to do this. The feeder would say, go ahead and fire me. I'm going to be okay. And I think that is part of just how you have to live. If certain things become non-negotiable, if certain things are so firmly embedded in who you are and what you do, where you can say, wow, that motto, that person lives by that motto, then that becomes your code. It becomes your mindset. It becomes your unwavering character. And sadly, there are people that have misguided quotes out there, misguided codes. Like, I'm sure you've heard people say, well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
If it's a good code, it should be universal. Tell that one to your wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people would say, like,
Yeah.
well, that's my motto. If you're not cheating, you're not trying hard enough. Yeah, that explains why you've been divorced 3 times, right? Or you have 2
Yeah.
different baby mamas or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
So, with that being said, like, what is your code? Saying that your code is embracing strength. Wow. Guess what? That's simple. It's honorable. If someone said, look, and this is something I don't share the story too often. My mother on her deathbed refused to take pain medication or anything that would alter her mental state because she wanted to be clear up here in her final days with her family. That is a strong woman. That is someone who embraced strength to the day she died. There are people out there
Absolutely.
that make weak decisions every single day. And a simple thing to do is to say, I'm going to make a strong decision. And that becomes your code. You believe in strength. You believe in truth, right? The average person says so many lies every single day. At the end of the day, can you say that you are living a truthful life, right? Like developing a strong code, whatever your code is, be a student for life, be the feeder, embrace resourcefulness, embrace strength, whatever your code is, you have to die for that code. Because that's part of living honorably, where someone can say, that person said it, they did it, they never backed down on it, they never unwavered from that idea. And I can honestly say at this point, as a former high school history teacher of 14 years, if you were to ask my students, how was I from day to day? My students would always say I was consistent. They would say that when they walked in the room, they knew exactly the type of person I was going to be. And I never changed because I owed that to them. That was my code as an educator. We can have codes as educators. We can have codes as parents. We can have codes as whatever it may be, a hunter's code, a skier's code. You can have all these different codes, but what is at your core? That should override everything. That should drive all your other codes that you live in life. And you just have to think about it. It all starts with what you believe, because what you believe is what you're ultimately going to become and how you're going to be remembered.
Man, that's powerful stuff, man. See, and that's why I asked you that, because you do have, when you said, I was an educator, as a history teacher, and they would say that I was the same consistent guy every day. Interestingly, we homeschool our kids. And
Mm-hmm.
what saddens me is if we had more educators like you, we wouldn't homeschool, because there's value in getting perspectives from people like you that have this. And I'm not trying to make this sound like a bromance, man. But there's like there's this strong, consistent, steadiness about you, and I've always respected that. And I got that the first time we recorded. And what was interesting is when we finally met in person at the expo, it was like you were exactly what I expected. It wasn't like this surprise, and importantly, it wasn't a disappointment or a letdown. You know how you can get to know somebody online, right? You follow them, and then you meet them in person, and it's like this disappointment. Like, this is not the person that presented themselves to me or to the masses or whatever. And it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that with you. It was like, no, this is Kevin. He's the same dude I talked to on the podcast last year, and he's consistent, he's honorable, he lives by a code, and there's just this steadiness that is very admirable, because not a lot of people have that. And honestly, the other aspect to that, what saddens me is the youth of today don't have more people like you in the classroom. For just a recap real quick for those listening, Kevin mentioned he was a teacher, high school. It was high school, right? if I remember
Correct.
that right. Yeah, high school teacher, history, for a very long time. And there's you, and there's a guy that I have on my show. I don't know if you ever listened to some of the whitetail hunting episodes that we do centered around mountain whitetail. There's a guy named Troy Pottinger, and
Okay.
he's a teacher. He's a gosh, man, it's something. He teaches some science at the middle school, and he is one of our people, man. His name's Troy Pottinger, right here in North Idaho. And he kills these massive whitetail bucks every year. He's just like you could cash a check on the fact that he's gonna get a big old mountain buck on public land. Anyway, I it sometimes it troubles me when I think about like the mentorship that is available out there and the what's lacking. I had when I was growing up, I had incredible mentors, both in
Hmm.
school. I can tell you one of the people that had one of the biggest impacts on my life was this farmer when I was in middle school, who happened to be a bus driver for the health benefits. Right? His
No
name was
kidding.
yeah, no kidding. His name was Mr. Smith. He drove bus number 40 for the Jordan School District when I was a kid. And I remember him because for 3 years I rode on his bus, and he taught me. He when people did wrong and weren't living up to what his expectations were to becoming a young man, everybody knew it, but he delivered it in a way, like from this place of steadiness and credibility, and like you know how you have those people that you kind of look up to, and it's more painful to know that they quietly are disappointed in you than the dude like that is acting like a drill instructor yelling at you for fucking something up, right? The quiet disappointment is more troublesome than the other way. And that's what this guy had. And he encouraged me in a way in my life that I can never describe, but he was a great guy. I doubt he's still alive because he was old and I'm getting old. So, but that the point is it's difficult for me to like put a value on where you could meet somebody who can impact your life in a very positive way, to have like this net outcome of a positivity for whether it's like this spiritual path or a code like you were talking about. I talk a lot about like the warrior code,
Hmm.
things that come out of that, and I don't mean from like just my military experience. I mean from, if you look back through the historical context of all of humanity, every culture has had this warrior code that they've looked up to and admired and utilized as like this standard for people to live up to, right? And you kind of have this essence of that. And so it doesn't matter what that is. Never discount what somebody that could come into your life unexpectedly, like this bus driver did me, and
Hmm.
provide you with that kind of guidance and mentorship and leadership that I think we're lacking. And I think that's why we have this place we live in today, where we have this lack of mentors, lack of strength, lack of masculinity, lack of strong feminine leaders that are like the old fashioned, like my grandma. I remember I came home from the Iraq War and I said the F word in front of my grandma, and she
Oh,
backhanded me like I'd never felt before. And I would never disrespect her like that. It was like this accident, when you're in the military, it just kind of comes out. And I said it in front of her. And I never said the F word in front of my grandmother again after that. And that's the kind of stuff we lack today. Um,
well, I'll
yeah,
add to it. I just sent you something. So the TOA group, the one that I mentioned earlier,
yeah,
that
the
one,
Samoan guys, right?
yeah, well, yeah. So the term warrior is defined in their recent social media that they put out, and TOA is actually run. It's the CEO of TOA is a female Samoan who was a former U.S. Marshal. Talk about a strong female presence, a strong female leader, someone who has the true warrior's heart in all aspects of warrior. And you'll see in that post that she describes it pretty vividly. So you mentioned earlier, it's upsetting that I'm not in that class anymore, and that kids aren't having me as a influence in their life. And I
Because we
do
need
miss
more
that
people
aspect
like
of.
you. Yeah, we need more people
I
like
do
you.
miss
Yeah.
that aspect. I'll bring this back to hunting, I promise. Well, one of my good friends, Mike Trybulski, former police officer, corporate guy, now does corporate security for a very significant bank. Well, Mike is my hunting buddy, but he also is starting up an apogee school here in North Carolina. And the apogee school or apogee program is the brainchild of Matt Boudreau. And Matt Boudreau is someone who was a public school teacher, a private school teacher. Now he is someone who is creating independent thinkers, really taking this idea of homeschooling to a new level where it's not just in the home, it's in a community of learners where they encourage the old fashioned values of being creative. They're not taking standardized tests. He doesn't like the idea of the word curriculum. He likes authentic learning. Well, Mike
Oh, that's
turned me
right
on
up
to
our
Matt.
alley. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll connect you guys. So Mike was like, "Hey, you really need to talk to Matt's." They call them the I think it's the young leaders, the young leaders program, and it's all these young men, and I'm sorry, young heroes program.
Okay.
So I had a chance to speak to these young heroes for an hour and a half, and I answered questions for them. And what I found immediately was every question was, "Excuse me, sir. Yes, sir. No, sir. Sir." Everything was very polite. Everything was the way it should be. These kids were asking some amazing questions. And that ultimately led Mike to ask Matt, "Hey, Kevin's written a book on survival. We have as one of our core beliefs self-reliance. We should bring Kevin on board." So I'm not only going to, be a regular speaker for the Apogee program, but there's something in the works where I'll most likely be a positive male role model for all these kids going up through the ranks, building out a survival curriculum for them, because that's something that I love youth education. I'm never going to stop being a youth
Yeah.
educator, whether it's through my charity fund or through this. And then on top of it, like it's the dads, helping out the dads and the moms take these kids and then building the family around the fire. Like, so the bottom line is, uh, Matt and Mike, they love the idea that I'm going to be helping out this Apogee program. Mike is actually the guy, I told you I'd bring it back to hunting. Mike is actually the guy who brought me to his family's property to go hunting here in North Carolina the day that I shot the two deer. And then, we had some other fun on some other hunting experiences, and we'll be doing a
No
whole bunch on
kidding.
that property.
Cool.
Yeah. So the hunting aspect,
Nice.
it's still here in the podcast. We're still talking about it, even though we're talking about something beyond hunting, which is the classroom and educating kids the right way.
It's all important, man. I mean, it's all important. We it's interesting with my podcast being, behind me, you can see the banner, right? I had this banner made that says something to the effect of the premier hunting podcast of the American West, something like that. This tagline. The thing is everything that we're talking about, it all ties into hunting. It all they're like how when you're out in nature, and it doesn't matter if you are sitting on a pile of dead leaves that are feeding the organisms and adding to the nitrogen in the soil that is feeding the trees, that is feeding the squirrels, that is eventually feeding all the other animals, and everything's just kind of feeding itself, right? It's the same kind of concept when we're talking about this. So when we're talking about values, where strong leadership and morals and ethics and codes, that is going to come into play when it comes time to defend the future of hunting against these folks that don't seem to have a moral code. They have an emotional code, and that's what they're going for. And so when we get off the topic of actually hunting, don't worry, for those of you listening, School of September starts next month. Right. And we have some spring bear episodes coming. We've got all sorts of hunting content coming out, but it all ties together to the concepts that Kevin is talking about and that we've talked about many times on this episode. And so never fear getting off the hunting topic here. I love it.
Got it.
Yeah. Well, brother, man, I really appreciate you joining me I know I've kept you darn near 2 hours here.
It's fine.
It's always
fine.
fast
all
when
night.
Oh man, I can always go a long time when with you on the show. It's like such an easy conversation, and I always feel like I get so much out of it personally. And I know if I'm getting that out of it, I know the audience is too. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for value and things to help people think about their own lives, their own pursuits, their own avenues of or I guess definitions of success. You know,
Right.
um, and again, I'm a total fanboy of the entire Fieldcraft Survival platform anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just great. I didn't know you guys had an app, man. I just kind of made a note and circled that. And so, um, is there anything else we want to leave the audience with before you mentioned some training with Sig Sauer, and some other events maybe this summer that people should be aware of at least?
Yeah, so I'm going to be heading back to New Hampshire this summer. I'm going to be teaching at the Sig Sauer Academy. I'm an alumnus of the Sig Sauer Academy. I've been to 20 plus courses up there. I've taught there before, and I'm always happy to go back there just because that community is really incredible. So I'll be there June 30th for Modern Survival Skills, as well as August 31st. If you guys are up in Epping, I promise you, if you go there, you can stay at the Exeter Inn. You can go to Goody Coles and get some amazing barbecue. You can go over to Kittery and go to the Kittery Trading Post, which is one of the greatest gun stores in the entire nation. And I've seen a lot of gun stores. They also have a huge fishing and hunting section. You got to go to the Kittery Trading Post. So I'm going to be there. Hopefully, I'll get a chance to go back to Colorado at some point this summer and do some backcountry fishing like I did last summer up in Leadville. But I'm going to be training all over this summer and I'll be traveling a bunch. So hopefully I'll be able to connect with people. If anyone wants to reach out to me, you guys know you can always email me, Estela@fieldcraftsurvival.com. You can reach out to me on Twitter at Estela Wild Ed. Same thing on Instagram. Sometimes messages get stuck in spam filter. So if you don't hear from me, message me because I always reply. And hopefully we'll see you guys at some training,
Hey,
especially
Kevin,
here on the East Coast.
what'd you say your Twitter was?
ESTELAWILDED, Estela Wild Ed, short for Estela Wilderness Education, which is
I found you.
the company that I started years ago, and that's what my charity fund is called.
Sweet. Okay. I'm trying to figure out this whole Twitter thing. I started a Western Huntsman account, like 2 years ago, and I don't know what I'm doing on it, but I like it. It's fun.
Migrate from Instagram to Twitter immediately because Instagram, let me put it this way. I have 36,000 followers or fans or whatever you want to call them. And 2 or 3 years ago.
On Instagram or Twitter?
Yeah, on Instagram. And before I would get 25,000 views on an Instagram reel, 100,000 views on an Instagram reel. I would get 5,000 likes on a post or 2,000 likes on a post. Now I'm getting about 175 likes on a post. I am as suppressed as you can be for showing weapons. And meanwhile, the weapon is like a hunting knife. The weapon is a shotgun.
Yeah, something dumb.
Like a bird gun or a 22.
It's not like you're out there with a squad automatic weapon,
Yeah,
it's so stupid, man.
Yeah, so I'm just encouraging everyone to make their way over to Twitter, which is called X. You'll find that it's way less suppressed over there, and it's a better place to be.
It's like where I get all my news now. Like I get my news from this X, and it's like I can get all perspectives. I can read it without a bunch of freaking drama, and I don't understand the Instagram thing, because like people, you're talking about how many followers. So I got late. I was a pretty late starter here on the Instagram world there, and so I'll reach out to somebody and be like, hey, you want to come on the show? And they'll look at the amount of followers I've got. And that's kind of how they base that decision. But because I was late, and I don't know if I'm suppressed or what, but like the followers on Instagram are not even a tenth of the downloads we get on the podcast, right? And so I don't understand how that works. And so I don't really care either. I'm like terrible at Instagram. So, I like this. I like this whole Twitter thing, man. It's been like liberating, something super liberating about it. But yeah, man. Okay. So everybody listening, by the way, I'm going to have a couple things in the show notes that you guys need to pay attention to. 101 Skills You Need to Survive in the Woods by Kevin Estela. I'm going to have a link. Would you rather me link that to the website of Fieldcraft or to the Amazon? Is that
Amazon's better. And no disrespect to Fieldcraft, they don't always have copies of my book in stock, but Amazon is Amazon, and you'll always find it there.
Okay, so I'm going to have the Amazon. Whoops. I'm running out of space for notes here. So everybody jump on and check out that book. Make sure you get the book. It's seriously, even if it's nothing more than you order the book and put it on your shelf in the event that, we lose power for extended periods of time or the internet goes down. I know Facebook was down the other day for like 20 minutes and the whole world almost fell off the edge.
It was amazing.
It was very dramatic. And so that kind of stuff, it's great for that. And I'm also going to have the Fieldcraft Survival website. And maybe I'll put your Twitter in there, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me see. I usually put everybody's Instagram in there, but maybe I'll just put your Twitter in there and your Instagram, whatever.
Yeah, I'm trying to build up that Twitter account. I back in, was it September or August? I think I had 800. I'm up to 1,500 now, so I doubled it.
Dude, that's awesome. I don't ever post. So is that how you get followers?
I don't know. Like I randomly will post things like I posted up a Randall knife that I was lucky enough to grab.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
I always post up like, hey, you can check this out, or like it's usually me like posting if like there's a new article that I wrote. But I definitely can say more on Twitter than I can on Instagram. Like
absolutely.
I've had Instagram pull things for me, and I'm like, really? I got put in timeout for that. Like,
it's so weird.
I think what I'm planning on doing is at some point when I'm ready to leave social media, I will burn the ships. I will say some of the funniest stuff possible that Instagram will yank immediately and probably suspend my account. But if you guys are watching, you're going to get a show. You're going to love it.
I love it. I'll be looking forward to that one. Maybe I'll do the same thing, man. I'm just going to Twitter. We'll still be on Instagram for a while, but I don't know. I don't know how to work it. So I'll put your Twitter in there, dude. You're like, you have a hell of a lot more friends or followers or whatever they call it on Twitter than I do. So Kevin, this was a fantastic conversation, man. As always, you always deliver. I really appreciate you joining me, and I value our friendship, man. And obviously, we're gonna have to get you on the show again in the future. I feel like you're just one of those guests that people can't get enough of, and I don't want your head to swell, but you're a great guest, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Anytime, let me know. And I'm happy to come out and join hunting camp anytime, as long as we can have Ike Eastman sign another one of his beef stroganoff meal pouches, which I kind of got him to blush a little bit at the podcast. So yeah, anytime there's a practical joke.
Did you record with Ike? Is that what happened?
Oh yeah. And I brought a pouch of beef stroganoff that's his signature edition into the podcast, and I was hoping that there'd be video, but I was like, "Excuse me, sir, would you mind signing this?" And he's like, "Oh my god." Yeah, so anytime there's a practical joke to be had, I'll have it. And
yeah, Ike's always a good sport too. I love it.
He is.
Cool, man. Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me on.
Let's do it. I'd love to get you out on if you ever want to come out and do a spring bear hunt with me. Let me know. That's like quickly becoming one of my favorite things. So, but let's just keep in touch, and we'll keep rolling through. And again, thanks for coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was fun.
You made it. That's the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you're following us on Instagram at The Western Huntsman and write us a good review at Apple Podcasts. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Stay Western, and I'll see you